Welcome. Scott here. Today I am bringing you another Black Clover mobile video. In this video, I will be covering on the upcoming seasonal mages, Party Kahono and Party Nozel. Both of them have their own unique stacking mechanics, Party Nozel with his Mercury while Kahono with her opening aria. They will power up as their stacks increase. To increase their stacks, they need to take a turn or use an ability. Nozel is a potent poison debuffer. He can inflict disarm to weaken targets, have a guaranteed buff dispel and can reduce opposition's buff duration. His special can unleash an extra attack based on the current Mercury stacks that he has. Kahono is a PvE specialist for boosting your party attacker damage. All of her abilities buff allies' attack stats. Her skill 2 and special gives allies the opening aria buff which boost critical damage and penetration. When opening aria reaches its max stacks, it will be replaced by the powerful festival aria buff. As she is a PvE specialist, don't expect her to do much in PvP. So which mage that you pick up? This video will aim to provide you insights on which mage to pick up. Let's start off with Nozel. Let me start off covering on the captain of the Silver Eagles. In general, Party Nozel is a technique attribute type debuffer. Currently, he is one of the 3 units that inflicts poison, with the other units being Raids and Witch Queen. Bulk of his attacks are mainly AoE. He has a unique mechanic called Mercury. He gains 1 whenever he takes a turn. You can gain more Mercury stacks via his LR enhancement passives. Nozel's skill 1 will attack all targets while inflicting poison continuous damage instances for 2 turns. The probability will depends on the number of Mercury stacks he has. His skill 2 is another AoE attack that inflicts disarm on all targets. If you have his skill page, he can remove a buff on the designated target and the ability will also inflict reduce buff duration by a turn. His special is a hard-hitting single-target ability that inflicts immortality immunity debuff. If the ability kills the target, he will unleash an extra attack damage on all target that scales off his current Mercury stacks. Upon using the ability, Nozel will lose his Mercury stacks. His combo attack is another AoE attack that inflicts poison on all targets for 2 turns. With his passives, Nozel will gain a stack of Mercury at the start of his turn. He can reach the maximum stack of 3 Mercury. Each Mercury stack will reduce damage received by 10%. In other words, he will have 30% damage reduction when the stacks is at 3. At LR plus 2, he will convert all instances of continuous damage instances that inflict on himself into Mercury. In other words, Nozel becomes immune to continuous damage instances and power up himself with Mercury. Examples of continuous damage instances are burn, bleed, poison, and electrocute. At LR plus 5, on top of the conversion of continuous damage instances inflicted on himself to Mercury, he will always inflict poison continuous damage instances on the enemy for 2 turns with all his attacks. His skill page is useful for him as it helped to enhance his utility by giving him a guaranteed dispel and buff duration reduction on all targets. Base copy is good enough for general PvE content. If you are planning to use him in PvP, he needs to be at least LR plus 2. For gear sets, the standard debuffer mage gear sets work for him, which includes full set advanced speed set, along with the small magic attack piece with a defense piece from the advanced defense set. Will be the ideal gear set. You can also make him tankier with HP and defense build. As his damage is decent for a debuffer, you can give him attacker gear to abuse his special. So should I pull for him? In my opinion, there isn't a general consensus on whether to pull for a unit. It really depends on whether you are a free-to-play or having a vast roster already. If you are lacking an AoE damage dealer, no swimsuit Noel or hateful Fauna, Nozel will be a nice addition to your party. He is really useful for the wanted missions as bulk of his kit are mainly AoE attacks and buff dispel can be a clutch utility to use in certain PvE fights. In general, he is a jack of all trades who offers handy tools to counter enemy mechanics. Before I proceed to talk about his kit, let me briefly explain the fundamentals of building a good team comp. In general, every good team comp needs a balanced set of characters playing their various roles. To be honest, bringing a full team of attacker mages won't get you to clear endgame content. Despite being a debuffer by trade, Nozel has decent damage potencies and he can be a nice sub-attacker with investment in his skills. If you are planning to use him for his utility, he should be able to work even without any investment in his skills. To upgrade the skills, you need to use wool shards. Wool shards can be bought at the world regional shops monthly. If you upgrade your world reputation to level 2, you will unlock the option to buy the highest tier upgrade material. If you haven't done so, I will suggest you to start leveling up the reputation level by doing bond patrol or memory hall fights for that specific world. You can also get skills upgrade materials at your squad shop if you have joined a squad. You can buy them weekly with guild medals or monthly with guild raid coins. So try to level up and join a guild. If you have spending power, you can buy skills enhancement chests at the premium black crystal shop. Now let me go through his skill set. Before I go in depth on his skills, let me cover on the poison mechanics. Poison will deal continuous damage that scales off the 5% of target's max HP. You can reach up to 3 stacks. Nozel can apply poison with his skill 1 or combo attack. If the stacks of poison reaches 3 stacks, the poison stacks will be upgraded to deadly poison, which will drains 50% of the unit's mobility when they get their turn. In other words, they will get their turn but they cannot act due to insufficient stamina. It will be hard to upgrade poison to 3 stacks with the limited options of poison units that we have in the game. Nozel will also need his max enhancements to do so. His skill 1 Silver Thorns is an AoE attacking ability that inflicts poison continuous damage instances on all targets for 2 turns. If he has the 1 to 2 stacks of Mercury, the chance is 50%. If he has the max stacks of 3, he will guarantee the application of poison. His skill 2 Silver Swords is another AoE attacking ability that will inflict disarm debuff on all targets for 2 turns. If his Mercury stacks is between level 1 to 2, he will inflict disarm level 3 which reduces the target's damage by 34%. If his Mercury is at 3 stacks, he will inflict disarm level 5 which will reduces the target's damage output by 42%. If you have his skill page, the ability will be enhanced that it could remove a buff from the designated target while inflicting reduced buff duration by 1 turn to all enemies. If any buff whose duration is 1 when Nozel execute the attack, the buff will be removed. His special Sleep in the Silver Ocean is a single target attacking ability. Upon using the skill, Nozel will inflict immortality immunity debuff on the target. Please do take note that immortality immunity debuff is not same as immortality buff removal. The debuff needs to be applied before you trigger the immortality conditions, which is usually when you lower the target's HP to 30%. Upon using the skill, Nozel will remove all his Mercury stacks. If the ability kills the target, Nozel will deal extra damage to all enemies that scales of 90% off his magic attack stats for every Mercury stack that is active when he uses the ability. His combined attack is another AoE attack which inflicts a stack of poison continuous damage instance on all targets for 2 turns. In general, playing Nozel is relatively simple. Build up his Mercury stacks. Use his special if you could kill a target and your Mercury stacks is at 3. Otherwise you will be better off using his combo for his poison utility. His skill 2 can come in clutch when used in the right situations. Like most damage dealers, upgrading his skills will increase his damage boost. In general, if you plan to use Nozel as your sub-attacker, you need to invest in his skill enhancements while giving him an attacker gear set. Likewise, if you are using him for his utility, poison, buff dispel, disarm debuff, lower buff duration or applying immortality immunity debuff, you should be fine even if you don't invest in his skills. Now let's cover on his skill page. As mentioned earlier, Nozel's skill page is a skill page that boosts his utility that includes 1 buff removal and reduce all enemies' buff duration by 1 turn. His skill page includes a passive that gives him a 20% chance of inflicting a 20% increased damage debuff if there is no continuous damage instances present on the enemy. Maxing out the skill page will enhance his probability to 100%. Unless you are targeting the upper leagues and have big spending power, I won't recommend you to chase too hard for dupes of the skill page. You can end up hurting your resources to pull for the upcoming units. His skill page is important for him as it enhances his utility, which is also probably the main reason why you will use him instead of other debuffers like Rill or Lotus. If you don't have his skill page, you can use other skill pages that boost his utility. For skill page replacement, you can use Sharen's skill page or the Generic Moonlight Necklace to boost his defense and HP and SP reduction utility with his normal skill page or Party Costume Noel's skill page. Now let's cover on his talents. To understand what is the best talent settings, you need to know what is the mage's primary role. Nozel is a debuffer that deals AoE damage. For his attack talent wheel, I would suggest giving him increased battle frenzy and increased magic attack. Increased magic attack will increase his magic attack stats by 7%. For the other talent, battle frenzy will be the better option since it allows him to gain 2.5% increased critical rate buff that could stack up to 5 times. For the talent craved stone, I would suggest you give him the attack talent stone to boost his magic attack stats as this will boost the extra damage from his special. For the defense talent wheel, I recommend you to go for the endurance defensive talent, which gives him 4% defense and 2% critical resistance, up to 5 times per wave along with increased defense that boost his defense by 20%. For the craved stone, you will want to give him the defense talent craved stone. In the support talent wheel, you will have a wide variety of options like one shown on the screen. Increased damage resistance will result Nozel to improve his damage resistance by 10%. Mage Blessing allows him to have a 20% chance of cool down his skill 2, which could allow him to constantly spam his skill 2. This will help a lot in ensure Nozel to be able to use her skill 2, constantly weaken enemy viaduct, disarming them while removing their buffs via buff dispel or reducing their buff duration. You can also opt to give him Swiftness talent passive, which will give him SP plus 1 buff upon having less than 2 SP at the start of his turn. Use this when you are pairing him with SP refiller mages like Valkyrie Noel, Party Mimosa, or Ceremony Charlotte. Most of the times, I will probably pair increased damage resistance with Mage Blessing, as Nozel needs to take turn to build up his Mercury stacks. Giving the Speed Stone will allow him to get his stacks faster and he can apply his disarm or poison debuffs before the enemy could harm your party. Now let's focus on his gear sets. Generally, you want to target for advanced gear sets pieces. For PvP, you want to use the full advanced speed set with the small attack and defense piece from the advanced defense set. Speed is important for PvP. If Nozel don't have his turns to use his skills to dispel or debuff targets, it is pointless to bring him for arena. The set can be farmed at the Red Power Gear dungeon. If you don't have enough pieces of that, you can temporarily slot in a full defense pieces to make him tanky. Remember, the longer Nozel survive, the higher chances he could apply his reduced damage taken buffs and thus ensuring your party survivability. You can refer to the middle gear set on the right for references. For substats, you should prioritize on critical rate %, magic attack %, defense %, and critical resistance % substats. If you have the ability to buy enchantment stone chests from the premium black crystal, you should prioritize magic attack % over critical rate %. You can also further boost his survivability by equipping him with defense main stats accessories. You can also give him the advanced gear dungeon gear pieces like Snowfield Warrior gear pieces from Advanced Sense Gear Dungeon or the Abandoned Friends gear pieces from the Gear Selection chest. But those gear pieces should only be considered if you don't have the set that I have shown on the screen. As mentioned earlier, Nozel has decent damage potencies on his abilities. You can give him the attacker gear set. However, the stats priorities will be critical rate %, magic attack %, critical damage %, and critical resistance %. For now, there are limited team comp options that you can use Party Nozel in PvP. The general team comps that could make full use of his kit is using the mono blue team comp of him with Clover Academy Noel and Zora. The last member you can go with is either Party William or Julius. Nozel's Mercury and Disarm paired with Zora's defense up buff from his Reflection Trap and Noel's damage reduction passives will ensure your party are able to withstand the opponents while reflecting back the damage to them. With the new Festival Mage, Valkyrie Armor Noel in the fray, Nozel can be used as your key debuffer or dispeller. You can abuse his Immortality immunity debuff to kill off units with Immortality. But do take note, you need to apply the debuff first before you trigger Immortality. Otherwise, you will be better off using his combo for application of AoE poison continuous damage instances. If you want to use Party Nozel, it is recommended to get him to LR+2 so that he becomes immune to continuous damage and use them to power up his Mercury stacks. With the recent game mechanics updates, non-burn continuous damage instances are being buffed. If you are able to inflict 3 stacks of poison on the target, it will convert into deadly poison, which will drains the target mobility by 50% when they reaches their turn. This is effectively prevent the target from acting even if they got their turn. However, and unfortunately, we don't have a lot of poison continuous damage instances options. Other than Party Nozel, the other units with poison utility are Raids, Witch Queen, and the default Nozel. We might see more poison mechanics units in the future, so Nozel get his moment to shine in the future. For PvE, he is one of the 2 units that have guaranteed buff removal. The other unit is being his sister, Party Costume Noel, who can remove all buffs with her special. Nozel's skill 2 will remove a buff from the designated target or the one that you target when you use his AoE skill 2 ability. Buff Dispel can come in clutch for certain fights like the Nightmare stage, Raids, or the Surpass Your Limits wanted mission fight with the Living Armor. Being able to remove buffs on demand is really a nice utility to have. Usually powerful buffs have short duration. His skill 2 can also lower buff duration by 1 turn, which might in clutch when you need it. Nozel have a wide arsenal of AoE damage attacks. His skill 1, skill 2, and combo attack are AoE. His special can technically do AoE damage if you kill the target with his special. Because of this, he becomes a valuable option to use for the wanted mission, Capture the King Wolf or Monsters Attack mission. But to deploy him for these stages, make sure you give him attacking gear and enhance his skills potencies. Now, let me cover on the Clover Kingdom songstress, Party Kahono. In general, Party Kahono is a sense attribute type supporter. She is an offensive buffer that boosts your party attack, critical damage, critical rate, and penetration. Her key mechanics revolves around her opening aria buff, which boosts the mage's penetration by 5% and critical damage stats by 2% per stack. When it reaches 5 stacks, it will be upgraded to Festival Aria buff. Festival Aria will grant the mage 60% increased penetration, 40% increased critical damage, 15% increased damage dealt buff. Now let me give a quick summary on her kit. Kahono's skill 1 is a single target attacking ability that grants increased attack buff to the mage with highest all attack stats. Her skill 2 is a single target non-attacking support ability that extend the target buffs by 1 turn while granting increased attack and a stack of opening aria. Her special is an AoE non-attacking party support ability. The ability will also grant 50% increased mobility for Kahono herself. It will also boost the party critical rate and grants a stack of opening aria to the party. Her combo attack will grants the partner mage an increased attack buff while having a 30% chance of inflicting stun on the target. Her enhancement passives will speed up the building of her opening aria stacks. Kahono's LR passive will trigger when Kahono receives damage from a defender opponent. She will grant an 10% increased damage dealt buff to the ally with the highest all attack for 2 turns. This is pretty good since we encounter defender raid bosses very often. At LR+2, when she received damage from any enemy, she will grant opening aria to the ally with the highest attack stats. At LR+5, other than the opening aria buff granted upon being attacked, she will grant an additional stack of opening aria when use her special on the designated target. In other words, the designated target will get 2 stacks instead of 1 stack of opening aria. In general, Festival Aria is a very powerful offensive buff that allows your nuker mages to do astonishing damage that you thought that the system have gone bonkers. However, the downside is that to get that awesome buff activated, Kahono need to apply 5 turn of opening aria to the targeted ally. Usually, units with long ramp-up mechanics aren't ideal for PvP. That is why Kahono doesn't excel in the PvP, which is the main reason why she don't get a max score from me. Yes. Her PvE support is the best that you can get from the game in the moment. It is also worth noting that her buffs boost attack. Units that rely solely on magic attack won't benefit a lot from her buffs. Currently, majority of the game's best mages focus primarily on magic attack, but their damage actually scales off the total of their magic and attack stats. All attack mages like Julius, Kyoto, Rhea, and Spirit Dive or pure attack mages like Black Asta, Clover Academy Asta and Jack, all variants of Yami will benefit from her buffs. She is also one of the 3 mages that give critical rate buff to the party. To be used in PvE, having a base copy is good enough. However, if you want to get an absurd score at the world boss, it is recommended to get her to at least LR+2 so that she can give opening aria to your attacker mage when she is being attacked by the boss. Her skill page is useful for her as it give her a SP+3 buff which allows her use her special faster. Her skill page also boosts the damage for the mage who has the highest all attack stats total damage once Kahono uses her special. For gear sets, the standard supporter mage gear sets work for her, which includes full set advanced speed set, along with the small magic attack piece with a defense piece from the advanced defense set. So should I pull for her? In my opinion, there isn't a general consensus on whether to pull for a unit. It really depends on whether you are a free-to-play or having a vast roster already. In general, having critical rate buffer is very useful and important for players, especially free-to-play players. The reason is because free-to-play players have limited access to enchantment stones. Until they have enchant their attacker gear's critical rate to a decent trigger rate, they will need to constantly rely on critical rate buffers to ensure that their attackers can unleash critical damage. The other critical rate buffers are Sally and Finral. I personally won't recommend people to skip her from the gateway. Despite her being a sitting duck for PvP content, you will be bound to use her a lot for future raids since she offers the strongest offensive buff that a supporter mage could provide. My advice to new players is to focus on PvE units first. Because if you cannot clear PvE content on a regular basis, you cannot power up your mages fast enough, as endgame materials like legendary or rare enchantment stones, rare or epic accessory upgrade stones, substats changing stones, etc. are the upper tier rewards that requires you to clear endgame raid stages to accumulate sufficient raid to purchase them from the exchange center. If you cannot clear endgame raids, you will limited to the must-have priorities, which is the mage enhancement or skill page dupe material along with the wool shards. Before I proceed to talk about her kit, let me briefly explain the fundamentals of building a good team comp. In general, every good team comp needs a balanced set of characters playing their various roles. To be honest, bringing a full team of attacker mages won't get you to clear endgame content. Don't expect Kahono to do a lot of damage with her skills. Her key utility is to buff your attacker or leading damage dealer until they can do crazy damage on the boss. To upgrade the skills, you need to use wool shards. Wool shards can be bought at the world regional shops monthly. If you upgrade your world reputation to level 2, you will unlock the option to buy the highest tier upgrade material. If you haven't done so, I will suggest you to start leveling up the reputation level by doing bond patrol or memory hall fights for that specific world. You can also get skills upgrade materials at your squad shop if you have joined a squad. You can buy them weekly with guild medals or monthly with guild raid coins. So try to level up and join a guild. If you have spending power, you can buy skills enhancement chests at the premium black crystal shop. Now let me go through her skill set. Her skill 1 Forte Bubbles is a single target attack which grants a 20% increased attack buff to the ally with the highest all attack stats for 2 turns. Upgrading the skill could improve its effects to 40%. Her skill 2 Fantastic Melody is a non-attacking single support ability. It has a 60% chance of granting extend buff duration by 1 turn on the designated target. It will also grant another increased attack buff level 3 for 2 turns and a stack of opening aria. If you have her skill page, the ability will give Kahono herself SP plus 3 buff. Upgrading the skill could improve the chance of extend buff duration to 100%. Her non-attacking Cantabile is a AoE party support ability. Upon using the skill, Kahono will gain 30% increased mobility. It will grant all allies increased crit rate buff level 4 for 2 turns and everyone in the party will gain a stack of opening aria buff. Upgrading the skill will increase the self-mobility boost to 50%. Her combined attack is a single target attack with the partner mage and increased attack level 3 buff while having a 30% chance of inflict stun on the target. Upgrading the ability will improve the probability of triggering stun to 50%. Holding a concert is an expensive activity, so do expect to invest a lot of will shards in Kahono to make her performance even better. I would suggest you to prioritize on her special and skill 2 as the main priorities. Having the mobility buff means Kahono can act faster even her turn is not ready in the turn order. Remember this, the faster Kahono get her turns, the faster the building of the opening aria stacks. Now let's cover on her skill page. Party Kahono skill page is another skill page that benefits universally to all supporter mages. It allows the supporter mage to grant 10% increased damage buff for 2 turns to the ally with the highest all attack stats upon using his or her special. Upgrade the skill to its maximum level will boost the increase buff potencies from 10% to 30%. As mentioned earlier, equipping the skill page will allow Kahono to gain 3 SP for herself when she uses her skill 2. Unless you have big spending power, I won't recommend you to chase too hard for dupes of the skill page. You can end up hurting your resources to pull for the upcoming units. Her skill page is good as it speed up the building of her aria stacks as SP economy is important for her to spam her special faster. Her special gives increased mobility which means Kahono can access her turns faster to use skills to gain opening aria stacks. If you don't have her skill page, you can use other skill pages that boost her utility. For skill page replacement, you can use Sally's skill page to provide that awesome increased all attack buff, William's skill page for a small passive heal or using the SR Vanessa skill page to give damage resistance buff for the lowest HP ally. You can also use generic skill page like the Moonlight Necklace to boost her own defense. Just keep in mind, without her skill page, her SP economy refill will be limited, but you can assist Kahono SP refill economy by using SP refiller mages like Party Mimosa, Valkyrie Armor Noel or Ceremony Charlotte to fill her SP faster. Now let's cover on her talents. To understand what is the best talent settings, you need to know what is the mage's primary role. Party Kahon is a defensive supporter. For her attack talent wheel, I would suggest giving her increased battle frenzy and increased magic attack. Increased magic attack will increase her magic attack stats by 7%. For the other talent, battle frenzy will be the better option since it allows her to gain 2.5% increased critical rate buff that could stack up to 5 times. For the talent Craved Stone, I would suggest you give her the Accuracy Talent Stone to boost her survivability. As her main role isn't to do damage, you can actually omit the whole wheel if you want. For the Defense Talent wheel, I recommend you to go for the Endurance Defensive Talent, which gives her 4% defense and 2% critical resistance, up to 5 times per wave, along with increased defense that boost her defense by 20%. For the Craved Stone, you will want to give her the defense talent Craved Stone. In the support talent wheel, you will have a wide variety of options like one shown on the screen. Increased damage resistance will result Kahono to improve her damage resistance by 10%. Mage Blessing allows her to have a 20% chance of cool down her skill 2, which could allow her to apply her skill 2. This will help a lot in ensure Kahono to be able to use her skill 2 for the opening aria buff. It is worth noting that her skill 2 has a longer cooldown of 3 turns. You can also use Swiftness, which grants her a SP +1 buff upon having less than 2 SP at the start of her turn. This is good when you are not using any SP refiller mages with her in the party. SP refiller mages are Ceremony Charlotte, Valkyrie Armor Noel, or Party Mimosa. I myself will generally use increased damage resistance and Mage Blessing in normal nuking setup, and damage resistance and swiftness for world boss if you are not pairing her with any SP refiller mages. As speed is an important stat for Kahono to use her skills to get opening aria, it is highly recommended to max out her support talent wheel so you can engrave a speed stone. Now let's focus on her gear sets. Generally, you want to target for advanced gear sets pieces. In general setup, you want to use the full advanced speed set with the small attack and defense piece from the advanced defense set. Speed is important for Kahono to get her turns to buff the party with opening aria. The entire set can be farmed at the Red Power Gear dungeon. If you don't have enough pieces of that, you can temporarily slot in a full defense pieces to make her tanky. Do take note, this setup should be your last resort unless you have difficulty in getting Kahono to survive the boss onslaught. For substats, you should prioritize on critical resistance %, defense %, HP %, and damage resistance substats. In general, any substats that helps to boost her survivability will be good. You can also further boost her survivability by equipping her defense main stats accessories. If you have her skill page, you can use the new gear pieces, Millionaire's luxury item along with small attack and defense piece from advanced speed set. You can get the Millionaire's luxury item gear pieces from the advanced gear red dungeon. Equipping the full synergy will boost Kahono's speed by 55% when she uses her special. This allows her to get her turns faster to ramp up opening aria. Well, I know it is hard to convince people that a unit is good. A picture will tell 1,000 words. I have some proof that show that Party Kahono is really worth the hassle. If you get her Festival Aria buff activated, she can enable your nuker mages, Black Asta or Rhea, to do astonishing damage. A 35 million score can be the score of a whole run for recent world boss, but the player achieve it in a Black Asta special. This is showing the evidence on how powerful the buffs are. If you haven't cleared the Hall of Illusions, it is also high time to do so. Party Kahono can be your missing piece to allow you to clear those stages. Of course, you still need to work on your gear critical rate and critical damage, which is vital for deploying any nuker setup. Kahono buffs will just amplify the damage even more. Before I end the video, let's recap on Kahono's kit. She is one of the 3 mages that could give your critical rate buff. The others are being Sally and Finral. Please do take note that Finral's special offers lower critical rate buff and has only 50% chance of trigger it. Once you have gotten her opening aria buff upgraded to Festival Aria, this is the time when you see your leading attacker Mage doing bonkers damage. Without any enhancements, Kahono can only give 1 stack of opening aria via her skill 2 and special. Getting to LR+2 will allows her to grant opening aria when she is being attacked. She is a great supporter for most raids, just be careful when you are bring her to a power attribute raid boss. Having 2 non-attacking abilities make her an ideal mage to use for Plechidna raid where you need hit attribute weakness. She is also great for assisting your attacker to clear nightmare stages of the squad boss or the surpass your limits missions as well. Her flaws is that she will get squashed easily in PvP due to no damage mitigation buff and offer limited offense. Her ramping up of her opening aria to festival needs 5 turns, which will be unfeasible for PvP, as most PvP fights should probably end within the first 5 turns. She needs heavy investment in her skills to improve her buff potencies, along with improving probability of her buff extensions for skill 2 and increased mobility on her special. So is she a must-have? If you have Sally, technically you can skip her and use Sally. In general, she just simply make the buff and damage spike a lot bigger. If you don't have her skill page, you can use Sally's skill page as well. SP+3 will speed up the building opening aria, which you can easily substitute it by using SP refiller mages such as Ceremony Charlotte, Valkyrie Armor Noel or Party Mimosa. Don't go too hard in chasing dupes on her. Please do remember that we are facing a shortened lead time in between banner releases. You will want to have sufficient resources to pull for the newer units down the line. Most of the newer units will need the dupes more than her to be functional. With this, I have come to the end of the guide. Hopefully, the video give the insights you need to make your decision. If you like the video, please give it a like. Please subscribe to support the channel so that I can bring you more Black Clover mobile content in the future. Have a nice day. Bye.